The longer the Trump administration refuses to transition out of leadership, the harder it will be for new leadership to undo the harm done to the trans community by the outgoing administration. We, trans people, have spent the last 4 years being actively targeted by the Trump administration, and when we assess the damage done, it's clear, now more than ever, that the Biden-Harris administration will need to take key actions to reverse that damage. The Trump administration has undermined and rolled back protections ensuring the fundamental rights and well-being of the more than 1.4 million trans people in the U.S. It has enacted a military ban that threatened the thousands of transgender people in the armed services and denied members of our community equal access to health care, housing, and protection inside our schools and at our jobs. But these policies aren't just words on a piece of paper, they are actions that all too often have violent consequences capable of delivering wave after wave of fear, devastation, and even death, especially for Black and brown transgender women. 2020 has already proven to be the deadliest year on record for transgender people, and the year isn't even over. On this year's Trans Day of Remembrance, November 20th, we will mark the fact that at least 36 trans people have been killed this year, and many more deaths are likely unreported. The majority of victims were trans women of color. As my friend Isa Noyola, a trans woman on the board of the Women's March, said to me on my podcast recently, death surrounds us. But this reign of terror for transgender people can end. The Biden-Harris administration is in a position to end this pattern of silence and persecution that our community experiences from the highest levels of government, with the appointment of Sean Skelly, a transgender woman, to the Biden-Harris transition team. The president-elect and vice president-elect have already signaled their intent to reverse the damage done by the Trump administration. While the work to protect and support the trans community is never finished, the Biden-Harris administration can start with 3 key actions. First, we need to appoint trans people to positions at the White House and every single executive department. Much of the damage inflicted by the Trump administration will have to be remedied by executive orders and legislation, but the conversations surrounding these fixes should not be made without the perspective and insight of trans administration staffers in the areas of education, housing, healthcare, civil rights, employment discrimination, and the environment. There are trans people and allies with the expertise to develop policies to markedly improve our lives rather than merely reversing the harm. The government also needs to establish a transgender interagency working group to coordinate changes across these administrative areas simultaneously, because many of them, including employment discrimination, involve more than one department. The larger point here is that if trans people are absent from these corridors of power, then a once-in-a-generation chance to help secure full equality will have been missed. Secondly, there needs to be urgency around passing the Equality Act. President-elect Biden must stay true to his word and oversee the enactment of the Equality Act within his first 100 days of office. 4 years under the Trump administration has shown that LGBTQ rights are not guaranteed and need to be constantly safeguarded through new and existing legislation at the federal level. The Equality Act passed in the House, but it has stalled in the Republican-controlled Senate. Third, we need affirmative action to increase economic opportunity for trans women of color. Economic opportunity is one of the most important tools trans women of color can have to combat the violence we face. According to the Center for American Progress, low-income women are disproportionately impacted by domestic violence. Many trans women of color face poverty as a result of race and gender discrimination. That's why affirmative action for the trans community, implemented with clear goals and timetables in both education and job opportunities, must be a priority. Affirmative action is controversial because it works. According to the Urban Institute, it played an active role in improving the economic outlook for Black Americans from the 1970s through the 1990s, But almost any time it's introduced into a conversation, it faces conservative backlash. If the Biden-Harris administration, however, is dedicated to providing economic security for trans women of color, it must prioritize affirmative action, especially in the areas of federal employment and in higher education, including community colleges. The incoming Biden-Harris administration can be a new chapter that can reverse backwards policies and solidify better protections and support for trans people in America. After all, our lives depend on it.